4. Dan's secret. It was a grim-faced Dan who left early that morning. But then he badly needed this trip to Club Matola. He wanted to be away, to be alone. Every time he looked at his wife, he felt hollow. Jesus, if only he had the courage, if only he could summon a bit of courage, he would confess to her what was bothering him. Of course, he would be taking a big risk. Jesus. If only he had the courage. I am a cheat, Julie. I am a complete cheat, I admit, but someday you will understand. I haven't told you, Julie, that the past has finally caught up with me. I have a letter in my drawer written a few days ago by a friend of mine, Tom Nyrenda, who is coming back this week from London. You've seen photos of him in my album, haven't you, Julie? That short bloke who looks like a pig standing on its hind legs. Well, Tom is coming back, but not alone. He's bringing with him a 3-year-old boy called Mlo. The point is, Mlo happens to be my son. I am a cheat, Julie. That's why I can't bear to look at you now. I feel so guilty, so wretched. When my friend Tom comes, I'll be away at Club Matola, maybe you'll understand everything better when he tells you about Mlo. You know, Julie, when I was a medical student in London, I found myself hooked by a beautiful Jamaican girl. She was an island of a woman in the sense that I thought she was the only beautiful girl around. Imagine Miss Jamaica, Miss Zimbabwe and Miss Universe rolled into one. She had long hair, combed straight, not the Rasta style of dreadlocks. She had a lovely chin which also drew your attention to her smooth, exciting lips. And her body was slim, making the dresses fit her as if the tailors had had her on their minds. We used to go to the pubs at night. We would sit behind the counter and exchange a few jokes with the bartender and the maids, or we would play mini soccer and amusement games for hours on end. We also went places during the vacations. I remember we once went to a place called Bangor in North Wales. A very cold place, that one. This was the place which made me realize that Britain, like Jupiter, would always remain a mystery to me. What happened in Bangor was that we went into a nightclub somewhere close to the Menai Straits. We had been in the smoke-filled dance room for a few moments when a young man came over to where the Jamaican girl and I were standing. You speak English? He asked, smiling at us as if we were the answer to his problems on earth. Sure, I replied. Thank God, there's someone who can speak a civilized language, he chuckled, winking at us. Meaning? These guys around here speak Welsh. Ah. And you don't? Me, he asked, as shocked as if I was talking of an abomination. I'm English. Just then a chap whom I had noticed hovering behind us quickly grabbed the English youth and snarled, If you're so English, why come here? Within seconds everybody was yelling at the English youth to leave immediately. I tell you, their choice of words was pretty nasty. Before the English bloke could say anything at all, burly-chested man in an undersized t-shirt caught him by the neck and sent him crashing to the door. This is Gwinnett, thundered the tall man going after his victim. Hey, what about the blacks? Someone asked, pointing at us. Leave them. Came a quick answer from somewhere near the counter. It was strange to be in a place where an English chap was booted out but a black wasn't. Such places are rare, Julie. I wouldn't say I was in love with this Jamaican girl. No, maybe I would have fallen in love with her if it hadn't been for the fact that she took heavy doses of drugs, mild and tough. That put me off. I discovered that she was on drugs when I went to her flat in Brixton. The moment I saw the syringes hidden in her bathroom, I knew what they were for. And later when I peeped through the keyhole and saw her pushing the needle into a vein in her arm, I was 100% convinced she was a seasoned drug user. Later I realized, not without alarm, that Trisha, that was her name, was becoming more and more dependent on me as her source of income. I found myself buying her dresses, food and other things. Probably, Julie, I would have turned my back on her if she hadn't been kicked out of the council flat she had been living in. She came to my place, miserable. That's when she decided to tell me about herself. She was Jamaican because that's what her mother had told her. She never knew her father. Her mother had been invited from Kingston, Jamaica, by a certain rich English lady to come over and work as a babysitter for her 3 grandchildren. When the rich lady died, Trisha's mother was in trouble. She hadn't enough money to pay her fare home, though she got something from the legacy. To make matters worse, she had got involved in a romantic relationship with a Jamaican sailor who had left her pregnant and returned to the sea, never to come back to her. A few years later, Trisha's mother passed away and little Trisha was left alone to face this harsh world. Fortunately, some well-to-do West Indian helped her a bit, but still life was hell. "It's sad, Dan, love, not to know where you belong," she said, crying. "I know. You guys from Africa are lucky. At least you have a home." "I know. And you don't get high." "Pardon?" "Never mind, love," she said with a faraway look as if recalling something she didn't want to think of. "So Trisha and I started living together under the same roof. At first my landlord was against the idea, but when I explained to him the plight the girl was in, he gave me the green light. After all, he wouldn't have said no for long. I was more or less his family doctor. One weekend, we decided to pay Tom Nyrenda a visit. Tom was a bloke from home who lived next door to a famous Tottenham goalie. The fact that he lived next door to a celebrity meant that Tom was somewhat of a celebrity himself. How many guys can claim that their neighbor is a Goalie of the Year award winner? He used to ask whenever somebody tried to trim him to size. Tom liked Trisha quite a lot, and I could see Annie was already imagining himself in a best man suit at our wedding. That day, he took us to their ground to watch his team practicing. We hammered Liverpool 2-1 last week. "You know why? It's because of that wizard there," chattered Tom, pointing at a bow-legged striker taking shots at the goalie. Just then, some bloke in a white scarf came over to where we were standing. He said hi to Tom and would have ignored Trisha and me if he hadn't looked at us closely. His eyes lit up. "Hey, we've met before. My name is Jack Bedford." "I'm Dan and this is Trisha," I said, adding quickly when I saw his eyes dance a bit. "She's my girlfriend." Jack turned to Tom and asked, "You know each other?" "Right," said Tom. "We come from the same place back in Africa." "You devil," said Jack, pushing Tom playfully on the shoulder, "and you couldn't tell me you had such a lovely couple for friends." "I won't forgive you for that." I didn't like his presence, for he kept his blue eyes fixed on my Trisha. She pretended to ignore him, but I was sure she was getting interested in this Jack bloke as well. I could tell because she was blinking more rapidly than she normally did. "Am I losing you, Trisha?" I thought, trying to search for her hand. I couldn't see it. I suddenly wanted to be away from everybody and seek the sanctuary of my bedroom. There I was the boss. "Trisha is not from Africa, is she?" Jack suddenly asked, his eyes holding hers longer than necessary. "What makes you say that?" I demanded before Trisha could say anything. "Well, I don't know. She's from Jamaica. Does that satisfy you?" Tom suddenly came in. He must have noticed my discomfiture. "It's okay," Jack Bedford replied, sensing danger. There was silence for a moment as we all pretended to be engrossed in what was happening on the pitch. It was Trisha who broke the awkward silence. "By the way, Jack, where did we meet?" she asked, smiling at him. "I tell you, I could have knocked the teeth out of her." "I thought you'd remembered me," said Jack with an even bigger smile than hers. "Not quite." Trisha shook her head. "Does it matter if we don't know where we met him?" I snarled inwardly, seeing myself in a boxing ring showering blows on him. "We met in Bangor, Wales, in a nightclub. They didn't want me. I was too English for them," he said, a tone of pride in his voice. "Oh, so that is where we met." I couldn't help chuckling to myself as I recalled how he had been booted out. "Phew. So that is where we met," I said, trying to create a big picture of myself. I had to show this bloke that I was no ordinary black man in the street. That was the time I was struggling with orthopedics, I think. I'm a medical student, by the way, specializing in. "Were you hurt, Jack?" Trisha asked suddenly, cutting me short. "I've a score to settle with you, girl," I swore furiously. "I lost some of my front teeth," he said, flashing his set of false teeth. In spite of myself, I couldn't help noticing that it was a superb set. Trisha and Jack soon started talking about London life as it had been some years ago. I found myself left out. So I turned to Tom and started speaking in our mother tongue, Tambuka. I was sure that Jack wouldn't get a word of what we were saying. Who actually is this bloke? I asked in Tambuka. He lives around here. Your friend. We go to the same pub. I don't like him. What does he do for a living? He's on the dole. Used to be a social worker. I don't like him, I said again, stealing glances at him. You think he's after your woman, Dan? I don't like him. I muttered. He likes black women all right, Tom said. But he wouldn't go for a Jamaican, at least I doubt it. Then there was a loud laugh from Trisha and I turned round. She was still laughing. You don't laugh like that when you are with me, my eye said. But she avoided my eye. I took a giant step towards the laughing couple and said, Excuse me, we've to go, Trisha. I'm expecting a visitor. A doctor who? Must you really go, Dan? Jack asked, looking at me, his eyes rather puzzled. I forced out a smile. Yeah. There's this highly qualified maid. Okay, then, let's go, love, Trisha said quickly. Nodding to Tom and Jack she said, Nice talking to you. Hope we meet again. Was she talking to Jack or Tom? I couldn't help wondering. So long, guys, I said and strode away like a losing Ensure player. As we drove away from Tottenham, Trisha said, Nice chaps, those two. Meaning Jack? I said those two. You like Jack, don't you? Don't you, love? Well, he's white. Is that why you don't like him? No. But I'm surprised at you. You've told me you don't like these whites. No. I meant the power-hungry and those who are out to make Jamaica a colony again. I know, I muttered and kept quiet, gripping the wheel angrily. She must have overdosed herself with dope, the fool. What's the matter with you, love? Jealous, she asked suddenly. Well, why should I be? I'm just a bloody poor African struggling to be a doctor. That is all. When I go back home, I'll work in a bush hospital somewhere. You're being unfair, Dan, love, Trisha said, sadly. When I looked at her I noticed she was about to cry. I'm sorry, I said. But she didn't say anything. Then she opened her handbag and took out a tablet which she threw into her mouth. I didn't want to ask what it was, knowing her habits. Maybe I should have asked her where she had got the money to buy herself such luxuries. When we reached home, Trisha placed a pair of headphones over her ears and listened to reggae music for hours while I buried my nose in a journal of tropical medicine. 2 weeks later, I came home rather early and, can you believe it? Found Trisha in bed with Jack Bedford. They hadn't heard me walk in for a train was passing by slowly. That reminds me, if you want a cheap place in London to rent, go for the noisy houses near the airport or railway station. Don't mind your eardrums. You should have seen their eyes. Trisha's were like a cow's on slaughter day, wide with helplessness. Jack's were like a lizard's when it's fallen off the roof straight into somebody's lap, shocked, fearing the worst. Without a word, I took my pocket knife and flicked out one of the blades. Out. I said to Jack, pointing to the window. He staggered out of the bed uncertainly. He was about to slip into his trousers when I told him no. Out. I roared, pointing to the window. Jack, still only in his underwear, picked up his clothes and dived out through the window. I didn't check where he had landed or who had seen him jumping out. Trisha was sobbing uncontrollably, but I ignored her. I packed everything I owned into boxes and suitcases. Then I went to the landlord and told him what had happened. Women, he hissed scornfully. He was unmarried. He offered to take my luggage to another part of the city where he had another flat. I said fine. I didn't say goodbye to Trisha, who was still crying, her head pressed against the pillow. A few days later, I got a phone call from Tom Nyrenda. He said Trisha wanted to talk to me. I said she could go to hell. You've got to listen to her story, pleaded Tom. No way. Tom said that Trisha loved me quite a lot and that she had slept with Jack because she had needed money for her drugs, which were becoming more expensive all the time. So she had told Tom about her drug habit. Yeah. She loves you, Dan. I don't want to be reminded of her, thank you, I said and banged down the phone angrily. A few months later, Tom rang to say that he had some important news to tell me. I hope it's not about Trisha. It is. Thank you, I snapped and threw the receiver down. But within a moment the phone rang. Again. I picked it up. Dan. It was Tom again. Damn these blokes from home, I swore to myself, they get carried away by anything. I bet the bloke believes it wasn't Trisha I saw in bed with that white boy. Yeah. You're behaving like a 2-year-old. Meaning? I mean, do you have to be angry with me as well? Who said I was? If you are not, then listen to me. You have to. I'm the only person in London who can accompany your body home if you dropped dead today. This is not our land, remember. Okay, I said impatiently. Tom is a cunning bastard, you know, he has a persuasive tongue. Trisha was here this morning, began Tom. So? Look, I protested. Wait till I finish. She said she's expectant. You doctors would rather say pregnant. She's pregnant. Do I have to tell you whose baby she's expecting? Anyway, despite his persuasive tongue, Tom could not manage to convince me to take Trisha back. He did manage to persuade me to send her a few pounds now and then, although at the back of my mind I wasn't sure the baby was mine. It could be Jack's or anybody's. How can one trust the word of a woman who goes entertaining other men when one is not around? So, Julie, I never saw Trisha again for the rest of my stay in London. After qualifying, I came home determined never to marry, for I was sure that every girl was a potential Trisha. Then I met you. I decided to take a risk, hoping that Trisha wouldn't come between you and me. Then a few days ago, I received a letter from Tom. He said Trisha had come to him some weeks back and had left the child in his hands, saying, take Mlo to his dad. And tell his dad I still love him. Tell him to bring up Mlo like a perfect gentleman. He must make sure Mlo doesn't go for drugs like his mom. Tell his dad if he gets time to spare, he should be dropping me a line about how Mlo is faring out there in Africa. Tom said that after she had left the child with him, Trisha seemed to have disappeared from the face of London. All efforts to trace her had been in vain. Anyway, enclosed in the envelope was a photo of Mlo. He looks like my father, small, penetrating eyes, small sad mouth, protruding, sharp forehead, big eyes. He is my son all right. Can you see now, Julie, why I don't want to be around when Tom comes back? Can you? But, Julie, do try to believe me when I say that I'm not a hypocrite. I don't know why I never told you about Trisha. Maybe I thought it was pointless to do so, for Trisha belonged to the past. I was wrong.